another point which is an Nakba. This is the root of the problem. By the end of the British Mandate in 1948, the Palestinians owned 93% of historic Palestine, and we were the majority of the land. We were more than 69%, and most Jews who came to Palestine during that mandate were illegal immigrants. So I think without solving this problem and focusing on this root, the two-state solution is dead because of the settlements and because not solving the problem for every Palestinian refugee to return to Haifa, Yafa, Safed, and all Palestinian cities.
I won't try to repeat. Hopefully you could hear. This gentleman's family was originally from Jerusalem. He's Palestinian American. His father was forced out. His family had lived in Jerusalem for centuries, perhaps thousands of years. And now they've been forced out and have not been allowed to return, as have most Palestinians. And his comment was that this is the root of the problem. And it absolutely is. Some people, I think, are aware of some of the oppression in the occupied territories and believe that the problem stems from 1967. But truthfully, there was a major injustice that occurred in 1947 to 49 and has continued ever since. And to understand the roots of it is an essential part to find a solution.
You talked a lot about media bias. I was wondering how you feel about media bias in the other direction. Specifically, the editor of the New York Times called your coverage biased, as well as the Anti-Defamation League. And I was just wondering how you feel about, if you really want to solve the problem, you can't just look at one side. I mean, Israel's definitely doing a lot of evil things. I completely agree with you, but I think just only showing one side of the story doesn't do anybody any good.
Thank you. Well, let's see, to address that. First of all, I think I'm probably the only speaker you'll have, perhaps, who actually does give the numbers for both sides, side by side. And really does make an effort to say, here are the total number of tragic deaths. I hope that more speakers will do that. Whenever we have deaths in a conflict, we should know all of them. They're all tragic deaths. As I said at the beginning, maybe you came late. I was specifically telling the part that are not in the media. Now, if the New York Times would say, well, we're specifically just telling the parts that are not in If Americans Knew, since that's what they're doing, that would be fine. But they claim to be the newspaper of record to report all the news, basically, that fits. And they're not doing that, as our studies have shown. Now, if I could finish.
Absolutely.
You say that the New York Times editor said that I only represented one side. No, I don't know where you got that.
Wikipedia.
Sorry, Wikipedia. It's very important for people to know how maybe you're not aware of the Wikipedia process. I'm glad you brought that up. The Wikipedia process is that anybody goes on and makes any change to any article on Wikipedia that they wish to make. Then if perhaps they say the world is flat, if they can do that. Perhaps somebody goes on and says, no, there's evidence that the world is round. Then the previous so-called editor will revert and say, no, the world is flat. So Wikipedia can be a valuable starting point for research, but it is completely unreliable on any issue, especially on this one. I'm sorry, but this isn't a debate. Now, you've asked a question, and I'm happy to answer it. So if that's your source, I urge you to go beyond Wikipedia. In terms of the bias, we've shown it. It's not in doubt, and I urge people, again, I'm saying this, next week or next month, you may have the Israeli Consul General here speaking, or somebody from Hillel, or somebody from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or somebody from the Jewish Anti-Defamation League that basically defames everyone else. And they will no doubt be excellent speakers and very convincing. So all anyone can do is really research this thoroughly for yourself. On our website, all of the numbers that I've given you are very transparent. If you go to our statistics, you click on it, you find out where we got the money statistic, for example, the deaths, where we got that, where we get our history. We urge people to look into it, to investigate it for yourselves. That way we'll all be well informed. Trying to remember the order people. I guess if you could tell whoever was the next one.
Right here, and then
Okay.
here, and then here, and here.
Right, thank you.
You. Go, Marty.
If you place the root of the problem in, say, 47, 48, how would you imagine then a piece that would accommodate? I mean, because if you go back to, say, 47, that obviously presents, well, extraordinary issues. And so how would you imagine an accommodative piece?
Thank you. The way I would imagine it, it would be similar to what South Africa has done, which is a truth and reconciliation process by which people's stories are told and heard and acknowledged. White South Africans were not forced out. South Africa remained, the people remained there, but the system of discrimination was changed because most of us feel it is deeply wrong to discriminate against other human beings, that a nation should represent its citizens without discrimination based on race or religion or ethnicity. Certainly if we were, as we have discriminated in the past, we, as a nation, I think, tried to correct that to a large degree. So in Israel as well, there are groups in Israel that are calling for a state that would be a just state, that would negotiate with Palestinians, would allow Palestinians who were forced out to return. Now, the right of return is often misconveyed to the American public. All refugees